How does a decorated Army Ranger become a name on Florida's death roster? One night, 4 shotgun blasts and a family erased. His final meal cooled as witnesses waited for his last words. Subscribe and stay with us to uncover every chilling step from hero to execution. What cracks beneath a calm smile, beneath a soldier's medals, beneath the easy laughter of a man who tucks children into bed, and how does that crack become a shotgun blast that shatters an entire family? Tonight, we journey into the mind and the final hours of Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson, the decorated Army Ranger who walked from a Gulf War battlefield straight into Florida's death chamber. Stay with us as we trace every footstep that led from hero to execution, every heartbeat that turned love into horror, and every unanswered prayer that echoed through a quiet Crestview neighborhood on a sticky September night. Jeffrey Hutchinson's story began far from the death row cell where he would spend the last 26 years of his life. Born on November 6, 1962, in the warm flatlands of Florida, Jeff was the 4th of 6 siblings in a house that was loud but loving. Teachers called him bright yet restless. A childhood diagnosis of ADHD left him bouncing between interests, jobs, and moods like a pinball. Mechanics fascinated him, the way engines roared to life under precise hands, but so did security work, where long, silent shifts gave him too much space to wrestle with his own thoughts. He was dependable, observers said, the kind of employee who punched the clock without complaint and drove home unnoticed. When the Army came calling, Jeffrey seized the chance to reinvent himself in a uniform he believed was stitched with meaning. Paratrooper wings followed, then the coveted tan beret of an Army Ranger. In the Gulf War's blinding deserts, he parachuted into blast furnace nights, carrying more weight on his back than some men ever carry in their hearts. Yet the return flight home in 1991 delivered him to a country he no longer recognized, and to a brain buzzing with insomnia, rage, and the aimless hum of untreated trauma. The honorable discharge felt bittersweet. Civilian streets were quieter than battlefields, but the silence screamed at him. A first marriage snapped under the strain. A second limped to the same inevitable end, and alcohol filled the cracks he refused to name. Then came Renee Flaherty, a 32-year-old single mother balancing 3 young children and a shelf of dreams that never seemed to gather dust. Renee was warmth. Even her laughter sounded like a porch light turning on. For Jeffrey, she offered a chance to feel useful again, to build things instead of break them. He cooked breakfasts, taught little Jeffrey Jr. how to change bike tires, braided Amanda's hair with surprising patience, and held tiny Logan's hand on grocery runs. Neighbors called them cozy, ordinary, lucky. By early 1998, the couple had moved their blended family from drizzly Washington to sun-drenched Crestview, trading pine log cabins for modest Florida stucco. Yet, love can be a thin blanket over a growing storm. Jeffrey's sleep worsened. Flashes of Gulf sand slipped into his dreams, and rage bubbled under polite smiles. On September 11, 1998, the temperature outside hovered at 90 degrees as evening settled. At 7 p.m., Renee phoned a friend, her tone bright, Jeffrey's voice joking in the background. 15 minutes later, she dialed another number, and this time her words trembled. They had argued, and it was ugly. Jeffrey had packed clothes and a Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun, slammed the door, and peeled away in his pickup. At a local bar, one that knew their favorite songs, he drank hard, venting to the bartender that everyone just needed to cool off. But heat only rose inside him. Less than an hour later, truck tires crunched onto the family driveway once more. The front door opened. Renee never had time to plead. A single shell tore through her skull. The killer moved room to room in stalking silence. 9-year-old Jeffrey Jr. was hit in the chest, cried out, and was silenced forever by a second blast to the head. 7-year-old Amanda and 4-year-old Logan were each dispatched with one merciless pull of a trigger. Then the house grew so quiet the ticking of a wall clock sounded like thunder. Blood pooled on children's pajamas patterned with Saturday morning cartoons. Jeffrey Hutchinson dialed 911 and spoke in a calm monotone. "I just shot my family." When officers arrived, they found him in the garage, phone still pressed to his ear, smoke still drifting from the shotgun barrel. He raised his hands, surrendered without a flinch, and led deputies into the carnage he had created. The man, who once swore oaths to protect, stood shackled in the back of a cruiser, watching red and blue lights paint his driveway like a broken kaleidoscope. The nightmare was only beginning. In the next chapter, we'll step inside the interrogation room, sift through shifting alibis, and watch a 9-day trial unravel the excuses of war trauma, bipolar disorder, and blackout drunkenness. The interrogation room smelled of disinfectant and gun oil, a cold echo of the massacre that still pulsed a mile away. Jeffrey Hutchinson sat under fluorescent glare, wrists cuffed to a steel ring, knuckles flecked with dried blood. A detective slid a recorder across the table and clicked it on. The first words Hutchinson spoke were hushed, almost rehearsed. 2 men in ski masks did it. His voice never cracked, not even when he described stepping over the bodies to dial 911. But the detectives had already walked those hallways. They had inhaled the gun smoke and marked each breadcrumb of evidence that led right back to the man now staring into the tabletop. Gunshot residue speckled both his hands. A Mossberg 12-gauge, still warm, lay on the kitchen counter beside 4 spent shells and 1 live round. The front door showed no pry marks, no kicked-in jam, and a dark sliver of Jeffrey Jr.'s shirt fiber clung to Hutchinson's pant leg like an accusation that would never loosen its grip. Even so, Jeff tried another tale. Maybe he blacked out, maybe it was the whiskey. But timestamps betrayed him. Bartender testimony framing every minute. Phone records pinning him in the house when the last blast echoed. By dawn, the detective's notepad read only one name. Hutchinson, Jeffrey Glenn, primary suspect. In January 2001, Okaloosa County Court convened a jury of 12 to weigh life and death. Prosecutor Valerie Finch unspooled a timeline so tight it cinched the courtroom's breath. The friendly 7 p.m. phone call, the meltdown at 7:30, the bar rant, the 40-minute window in which 4 lives vanished. Finch played the 911 tape. Jurors flinched as Hutchinson's flat admission filled the speakers. She marched the Mossberg down the aisle like grim parade, let the jury feel its weight, asked them to imagine a 7-year-old facing that muzzle. Defense attorney Charles Dorio countered with scars of war. He called psych experts who painted Hutchinson as bipolar, chemically unbalanced, dragging Gulf War nightmares into family life. They described sleepless loops, night sweats, panic punches thrown at invisible enemies. Yet, under cross-examination, each witness confessed they could not prove a psychotic break at the exact trigger pull. The prosecution reminded jurors that Hutchinson loaded and reloaded, aimed and re-aimed. That was deliberation, she insisted, not delirium. For 9 days, the courtroom oscillated between forensic charts and baby photos. Evidence and innocence twisted together until the gallery openly wept. The jury deliberated less than 5 hours before filing back, eyes red, verdict sheets trembling. Guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder. Sentencing convened 2 weeks later. In Florida, jurors recommend, judges decide. They weighed mitigating factors: military valor, no prior record, a psychiatrist's diagnosis, but aggravators towered higher: multiple victims, tender ages, execution-style brutality. The jury recommended death for each child's murder, life for Renee's. Judge Grant Holloway accepted the guidance, yet took a moment, eyes wet, to address the defendant directly. "You carried military honor once," he said, voice hoarse, "but honor abandoned you when you chambered that second shell." He handed down 3 death sentences and 1 life term, then watched bailiffs escort Hutchinson to the tunnel that swallowed condemned men. Florida State Prison's death row is a narrow world. A 6-by-9-foot cell, concrete bed slab, 1 barred window that flings hot swamp light across peeling paint. Hutchinson arrived in 2001 and soon found that days blur, but nights stalk you. He read tattered thrillers, wrote letters nobody saved, and logged grievances about migraines that medicine never cured. Guards noted he kept photos of Renee's children taped to the wall, but when lightning storms cracked the sky, he turned them face down. Appeals unfurled like desperate kites. In 2003, the Florida Supreme Court affirmed every conviction. A federal habeas petition in 2008 argued ineffective counsel. It died on procedural grounds. 2013 brought a last-ditch plea to the U.S. Supreme Court, claiming Gulf War syndrome clouded criminal intent. Certiorari was denied without comment. Each rejection tightened the calendar. In July 2024, Governor Elaine Parker signed the death warrant, scheduling execution for May 1, 2025. The months that followed were thick with rituals. Lawyers raced motions through Tallahassee, arguing lethal injection protocols could cause undue pain. Courts disagreed. Spiritual advisors visited to talk forgiveness. But Hutchinson fixated on logistics. Who would claim his body? Where the ranger insignia should rest on the folded flag at burial. He refused most press interviews, yet penned a single line to a college journalism student who had written him twice a month. "Some ghosts you earn, others you create." Dawn painted the prison yard pastel pink on May 1, 2025, and the countdown began. A chaplain murmured scripture. A guard marked time on a clipboard. The kitchen plated a final feast. Salmon, mahi-mahi, asparagus, a butter-glossed baked potato, and tall iced tea sweating in the humid air. Hutchinson ate quietly, pausing once to stare at the spines of paperback novels stacked on his shelf. Battles won, families saved, heroes redeemed. None resembled the ending rushing toward him. The sun dipped behind razor-wire walls on May 1, 2025, as Jeffrey Glenn Hutchinson took the last steps of a journey that began with Army oaths and ended in a death row corridor. Hours earlier, he had consumed the ritual feast he chose. Salmon and mahi-mahi laid beside spears of asparagus, a buttered baked potato flanked by sweating iced tea, and spoken quietly with his sister and a chaplain who offered scriptures about mercy. At 7:55 p.m., guards escorted him into Florida's execution chamber, a sterile cube washed in fluorescent white. He lay on the gurney without resistance, wrists and ankles strapped down, IV lines threaded into each arm. Witnesses stared through thick glass while a microphone dangled overhead, waiting for final words. Hutchinson lifted his head, but after a brief, indistinct whisper, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a private apology, he said nothing more. The warden nodded. Sodium pentobarbital surged through the tubing, and almost immediately Hutchinson's legs tremored, a violent shudder that rippled up his torso. Within 2 minutes, his eyes fluttered half open. Within 5, they fixed on the ceiling tiles with a vacant glaze. Time stretched like molasses for the assembled observers. one juror from the 2001 trial, two surviving relatives of Renee Flaherty, a lone veteran who had once served beside Hutchinson in Desert Storm. 15 minutes after the first injection, the prison doctor stepped forward, pressed a stethoscope to the condemned man's chest, and called the time of death. 8:15 p.m. Hutchinson was 62. Outside, humid night air clung to the oak trees lining the road as reporters filed live updates. Some spoke of justice fulfilled. Others replayed the massacre's agony. 4 shots, 3 children, a mother who never saw it coming. Yet, even in that final stillness, the contradiction stayed tangled. A trained protector turned predator. A father figure who destroyed the family he claimed to love. A soldier whose valor could not outweigh his violence. Florida closed another case file, but the moral ledger remained restless, asking whether any sentence can truly balance the scales when innocence is the first casualty and forgiveness arrives too late to matter. Jeffrey Hutchinson's story ends with an IV drip and a whispered prayer, but the echoes of that shotgun still haunt Crestview. Justice was delivered, yet no verdict revives the innocent. Remember their names, not his. Share this video so their stolen voices keep speaking for all who seek answers.